On the morning of her son's first birthday, Sophia Rossi was a ghost, haunting the halls of her own life. Her husband, the billionaire tech mogul Nathaniel Blackwood, had left her for another woman, leaving her with nothing but a broken heart and a pending divorce designed to strip her bare. He had been her world, and he had shattered it with casual cruelty. But as the caterers set up for a birthday party, he wouldn't attend a black car pulled into the driveway. It was Nathaniel. And in his hands was not a birthday gift, but a leather-bound folio that would expose a lie so profound it would either destroy them completely or rewrite their entire reality. The penthouse on Central Park West was less a home and more a declaration. Spanning the top 2 floors of one of the city's most prestigious pre-war buildings, it was a monument to Nathaniel Blackwood's ambition, a glass-walled fortress overlooking the emerald heart of Manhattan. Sophia Rossi had once thought of it as their kingdom, a palace built on the foundations of love and shared dreams. Now it felt like a cage, albeit a breathtakingly beautiful one, gilded with Italian marble custom-made Fendi furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows that drank in the skyline. Life with Nate had always been a whirlwind. He was a force of nature, a man who had clawed his way up from a working-class neighborhood in Queens to become one of the most formidable names in venture capital. He had a mind that moved at the speed of light and a charisma that could charm even his most hardened adversaries. When he had turned that incandescent focus on Sophia, a quiet art history graduate, working at a small Chelsea gallery, she hadn't stood a chance. He had pursued her with the same relentless determination he applied to his business deals, showering her with affection, whispering promises of a future she'd only read about in novels. Their wedding had been a lavish affair at the Oheka Castle on Long Island, featured in Vogue. For 5 years, their life was a meticulously curated fairy tale. There were impromptu trips to Monaco on their private jet front-row seats at Paris Fashion Week, and quiet Sunday mornings spent reading the paper in their sprawling Hamptons estate. Nate had adored her, or so she believed. He'd called her his anchor, the calm center in the hurricane of his life. The birth of their son Oliver 10 months ago should have been the final perfect piece of their idyllic life. He was a beautiful baby, with Nate's dark, serious eyes and Sophia's gentle smile. Cradling him in her arms in the private suite at Lenox Hill Hospital, Sophia had felt a love so profound it was almost painful. She watched Nate hold his son for the first time, his usually guarded expression melting into one of pure, unadulterated awe. "Everything I do for you too," he had whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll build a dynasty for him, Soph, I promise." But promises, she was learning, were fragile things. In the months that followed, a subtle chill had begun to creep into their perfect world. It started with small things easily dismissed. Nate was working later than ever, his nights filled with emergency board meetings and urgent calls with the Tokyo office. When he came home, the scent of his Tom Ford cologne was often mingled with something else, a faint floral perfume she didn't recognize. He became more attached to his phone, angling the screen away from her and snapping it shut whenever she entered the room. The physical distance grew too. The easy intimacy they had once shared began to evaporate. His touch became perfunctory, his kisses brief and distracted. He blamed it on stress. "The market is volatile, Sophia. I'm closing the biggest deal of my career. I just need to focus." She tried to be the supportive wife, preparing his favorite meals, drawing him relaxing baths, and trying to reignite the spark that had once burned so brightly between them. But it was like trying to light a match in the rain. He was present in body, but his mind, his soul, was somewhere else entirely. One evening, About a month before Oliver's first birthday, Sophia was rocking her son to sleep in his meticulously designed nursery. The room was a soft palette of creams and blues with a hand-painted mural of whimsical animals on the ceiling. Nate was supposed to be home for dinner, a rare promise he'd made earlier that week. At 8 o'clock, he wasn't there. At 9, his assistant called to say Mr. Blackwood had been pulled into an unavoidable dinner with investors from Zurich. Sophia's heart sank, a familiar ache of disappointment settling in her chest. She put Oliver in his crib, kissing his soft cheek, and walked back into their master suite. Nate's briefcase was on a velvet armchair left there from the morning. A flicker of something guilt, curiosity, desperation made her pause. She had never once in all their years together gone through his things. It felt like a violation of the trust that was the bedrock of their marriage. But that bedrock was already fractured, wasn't it? Her hands trembled as she unlatched the gold clasps. Inside were the usual files and his laptop. Tucked into a side pocket, however, was a small velvet box from Cartier. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it for her? An apology. A surprise. Hope, foolish and bright, surged through her. She opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of white satin, was not a ring, but a pair of exquisite diamond earrings. They were a stunning modern design, something far more severe and angular than her own classic tastes. A small gift card was tucked beneath the satin. With trembling fingers, she pulled it out. The note was written in Nate's familiar, confident script. Victoria, to celebrating our new venture. The future is ours. N. Victoria. The name echoed in the silent room, a death knell for the life Sophia thought she had. It wasn't a business venture he was celebrating. She knew it with a sickening certainty that hollowed out her insides. All the late nights, the secret calls, the emotional distance, it all crashed down on her at once. She sank to the floor, the Cartier box falling from her numb fingers, the diamonds scattering like cruel glittering tears on the plush Aubusson rug. The gilded cage had never felt more like a prison. The silence of the penthouse was deafening, broken only by the sound of her own heart breaking. The name Victoria became an obsession. It gnawed at Sophia during the day and haunted her dreams at night. Who was she? What did she look like? How long had this been going on? The questions circled endlessly in her mind, a vortex of pain and suspicion. Nate's behavior, seen through this new horrifying lens, became a road map of his deceit. Every late night, every distracted kiss, every glance at his phone was now a piece of a puzzle she couldn't bear to solve, yet couldn't stop assembling. Sophia became a detective in her own home. She started with his credit card statements, which were accessible online through their joint account portal, a corner of their finances he'd likely overlooked. She scrolled through months of transactions, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and grim determination. There were the usual charges, 5-figure dinners at Per Se, and Jean-Georges purchases at Brioni and Tom Ford, the monthly payment for his Bugatti Chiron. But then she found them charges that didn't fit. A suite at the Carlyle booked on a night he was supposedly in Chicago. Purchases from La Perla, a lingerie brand far racier than anything she wore. A recurring charge for a private car service she had never used. And then a name. A charge for a custom floral arrangement from a bespoke florist in the Flatiron district with a delivery note to a Victoria Vance at Vance Capital. A quick search on her laptop, and the world tilted on its axis. Victoria Vance was not some fleeting dalliance. She was a powerhouse. Photographs showed a woman in her late 30s with sharp, angular features, raven black hair cut into a severe bob, and an aura of ruthless confidence. She was the founder and CEO of Vance Capital, a rival private equity firm known for its aggressive and often predatory takeover strategies. Financial news articles lauded her as a titan of industry, a shark in a Chanel suit. She was Nate's equal in every way, ambitious, brilliant, and unyielding. She was everything Sophia was not. Sophia felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just an affair. It felt like a merger. He wasn't just sleeping with this woman. He was building a future with her, the same future he had once promised Sophia. The diamond earrings in the Cartier box were not a lover's trinket. They were a corporate seal on a new partnership. Her best friend Chloe Evans came over the next day, finding Sophia pale and drawn, mechanically feeding pureed pears to a blissfully unaware Oliver. Chloe, a sharp-witted art dealer with a no-nonsense attitude, took one look at her friend and knew something was terribly wrong. "Spill it," Chloe said, taking the baby from Sophia's arms and settling him on her hip. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Hesitantly at first, then in a flood of tears and whispered words, Sophia told her everything: the perfume, the late nights, the Cartier box, the credit card statements, and the damning identity of Victoria Vance. Chloe listened patiently, her expression hardening with each new detail. "That absolute bastard," she finally hissed, her voice low and furious. "I never fully trusted him. He's too polished, too perfect. It's always the perfect ones." "What do I do, Chloe?" Sophia whispered, her voice cracking. "Do I confront him? Do I pretend I don't know if I accuse him and I'm wrong?" "You're not wrong, Soph," Chloe said gently but firmly. "Your gut has been screaming at you for months. This is just the proof. You need to be smart about this. A man like Nate, with that much power and that much to lose, he won't just confess and apologize. He'll lie. He'll gaslight you. He'll make you think you're the crazy one." Chloe was right. A direct confrontation would only give him the chance to cover his tracks, to paint her as a hysterical, paranoid wife. She needed more than just a credit card statement. She needed something undeniable, something that would leave him with no escape. The following week, Nate announced he had to fly to London for a 3-day conference. It was the opportunity she needed. The night he left after the housekeeper had gone home, and Oliver was sound asleep, Sophia walked into Nate's home office. The room was his sanctuary, paneled in dark mahogany, smelling of leather and old books. It was the one place she rarely entered. She went straight for his desktop computer, her hands clammy. She knew his password. It was the date they had first met, a detail that now felt like a cruel joke. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the computer booted up. She opened his email client, her eyes scanning the inbox. It was mostly business market analyses, shareholder reports, legal documents. But then she saw a folder separate from the others, simply titled VV. Her breath hitched. With a click, she opened it. It was all there. A chain of emails stretching back nearly a year. They started professionally discussing a potential hostile takeover of a tech firm they were both circling. But the tone quickly shifted. Business strategy bled into flirtation, then into something far more intimate. There were plans for secret meetings, references to nights spent together, and discussions about their future. A future that explicitly did not include Sophia. One email from Victoria stood out. "The dead weight needs to be handled delicately, N. A messy divorce could jeopardize the merger. We need her gone, but quietly. The prenup is ironclad." Write Nate's reply, sent just 3 days prior. "Don't worry about Sophia. The prenup is a fortress. She'll be taken care of, but she won't be a problem. When this is done, it will just be you and me. And the Empire. Dead weight. The words burned into Sophia's mind, searing her soul. She wasn't a wife, a partner, the mother of his child. She was an obstacle, a piece of collateral damage in his relentless pursuit of more. She felt the floor drop out from beneath her, the cold, hard reality of his betrayal crashing down with the force of a physical blow. She stumbled back from the desk, a choked sob escaping her lips. The whispers in the dark had become a deafening roar, and in their echo, the life she had known was utterly and irrevocably destroyed. Sophia spent the next 2 days in a state of suspended animation, moving through the motions of her life on autopilot. She fed Oliver, played with him, read him stories, her face a mask of serene motherhood that hid the maelstrom raging within her. The words from the emails were seared onto the back of her eyelids. Dead weight. The prenup is a fortress. It will just be you and me. Each phrase was a fresh stab to her heart. The love she thought she had, the man she thought she knew, it was all an illusion, a carefully constructed lie. When Nate returned from London, he walked into the penthouse, looking energized, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. He dropped his briefcase, loosened his tie, and leaned in to kiss Sophia. She flinched, turning her head, so his lips brushed her cheek. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but he noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "You seem off." "Just tired," she said, her voice flat. Oliver was up teething last night. It was the perfect excuse, one she had used often. But this time it felt different. The lie sat heavy and bitter on her tongue. She waited until that evening. Oliver was asleep. The city lights twinkled like a distant, indifferent galaxy outside their panoramic windows. Nate was in their bedroom changing out of his suit. Sophia walked in and closed the door behind her, the soft click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the silent room. He was standing in front of his closet, shirtless, his back to her. He was in incredible shape, a testament to the personal trainer who came to their private gym 5 mornings a week. He was the image of power and success. He was a complete stranger. "Nate," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We need to talk." He turned a casual smile on his face that quickly faded when he saw her expression. She was holding a single piece of paper. It was a printout of his email to Victoria Vance, the one where he called her dead weight. "What's this?" he asked, though his eyes for a split second flashed with panic before being masked by a cool indifference. I believe the subject line was, "Finalizing the timeline." Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly but laced with a cold fury she didn't know she possessed. It was in a folder labeled VV. I assume that stands for Victoria Vance. The color drained from Nate's face. He stared at her, his jaw tight. The charm, the easy confidence, it all vanished, replaced by something hard and calculating. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He didn't even try to explain. The speed with which he shifted from husband to adversary was terrifying. "You went through my private emails," he stated, his voice dangerously low. "It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. You hired private car services and booked suites at the Carlisle," she shot, back her voice rising. "You bought her Cartier earrings and La Perle lingerie on our joint account. You plotted to discard me like a business liability while I was at home raising our son. Don't you dare talk to me about privacy." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "So what now, Sophia? You want to play the scorned wife? You want to cry and scream and throw things? Go ahead. Get it out of your system." His dismissiveness was more painful than any lie. It was as if her pain was nothing more than an inconvenient footnote in his grand plan. "I want to know why Nate," she whispered, the fight draining out of her, leaving only a hollow ache. "After everything. After Oliver. Why?" He finally looked at her, his eyes as cold and gray as a winter storm over the Atlantic. "Why? Because I outgrew you, Sophia. I built an empire. And I need an empress, not a gallery girl. Victoria understands my world. She challenges me. She's my partner. You were a beautiful chapter, but the book has to move on." The cruelty of his words stole her breath. He had stripped away 5 years of marriage, of shared history of love, and reduced it to a chapter in a book he was now finished reading. "So that's it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "You just throw me away?" "Don't be so dramatic," he scoffed, pulling on a fresh shirt as if they were discussing a business negotiation. "You'll be fine. The prenup is very clear. You'll get the settlement we agreed upon when we married. It's more than enough for you and Oliver to live comfortably." Comfortably, she repeated, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in her throat. "You are worth billions, Nate. You build a life with me. You have a child with me, and then you pay me off like a consultant whose contract has expired." "That's exactly what I'm doing," said his voice utterly devoid of emotion. He walked over to his dresser and picked up his watch, a Patek Philippe with a price tag that could have bought her childhood home several times over. "My lawyers will be in touch with you tomorrow to begin the proceedings. I'll be staying at the club for now. I'd appreciate it if you could pack a few of my things." He started to walk past her towards the door. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded finality of it all ignited something in Sophia. All the pain, the humiliation, the heartbreak coalesced into a single moment of white-hot rage. "Get out!" she seethed, her voice shaking with an intensity that made him pause. He turned a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "This is my apartment, Sophia, and it is my home, the home I made for our son, who is sleeping in the next room. You will not stand here and dictate the terms of my eviction while wearing the shirt I laid out for you this morning," she screamed, the sound raw and torn from her soul. "You want this to be a business transaction, fine. Get out of here and send your lawyers. I don't want to see your face again." For the first time, a shadow of something unreadable passed over his face. It wasn't remorse or guilt. It was something else. Calculation. Perhaps even a hint of respect for the fire she was showing. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Without another word, he turned, walked out of the bedroom, and closed the door behind him. Sophia stood alone in the cavernous room, the printout of the email still clutched in her hand. The silence he left behind was absolute. The unveiling was complete. The man she had loved was gone, and in his place was a monster. And she was trapped in his gilded cage, waiting for his lawyers to come and set the terms of her release. The days that followed were a blur of numb disbelief and sharp, gut-wrenching pain. Nate was true to his word. The very next morning, a sleek black envelope was delivered by courier. It was from the law firm Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen and Katz, one of the most powerful and ruthless corporate law firms in the country. Inside were the initial divorce filings and a letter from Nate's lead attorney, a man named Arthur Vance. The name was a cruel twist of the knife. He was Victoria's father. The whole affair felt incestuous, a family enterprise dedicated to her destruction. The letter was clinical and brutal. It outlined Nate's terms, citing their prenuptial agreement. Sophia would receive a one-time payment of $5 million. In exchange, she would vacate the penthouse within 60 days, sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement forbidding her from ever speaking or writing about their marriage, and agree to a structured child support arrangement for Oliver that was, while generous by normal standards, a pittance relative to Nate's vast fortune. The custody agreement was the most galling part. It proposed a 50-50ths split, with Oliver spending alternating weeks with each parent, a ridiculous and disruptive arrangement for a 1-year-old child. It was a declaration of war. The $5 million, which once would have seemed like a lottery win, felt like an insult. It was a fraction of his wealth, a sum designed to buy her silence and make her disappear. The custody arrangement wasn't about what was best for Oliver. It was a power play, a way to ensure he still had control. Chloe, ever the pragmatist, immediately put her in touch with a divorce attorney. "You can't fight Arthur Vance with some local family lawyer," she had said. "You need a killer." The killer's name was Mr. Peterson, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for being a bulldog. His office was not flashy, but his eyes were sharp, and he listened to Sophia's story without a flicker of surprise or judgment. He read the prenup, his lips pursed. "It's a well-drafted document, Mrs. Blackwood," he said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "Blackwood's lawyers built a fortress just as he said. Challenging the core tenets of it will be an uphill battle. A very, very steep one." "He cheated on me," Sophia said, her voice small. "He planned this with her. Doesn't that count for anything? In the court of public opinion, yes. In a court of law in New York, a no-fault state, it matters very little when it comes to the division of assets outlined in a signed prenuptial agreement," Mr. Peterson explained patiently. "Infidelity is a moral failing, not typically a contractual breach. However," he leaned forward, "the custody arrangement is another matter entirely. No judge will see a 50-50ths split for a child this young as being in his best interest. That's our leverage. We fight him on custody. We make that part of the process so messy and so public that he'll be forced to be more reasonable on the financial settlement to make it go away." The strategy felt ugly and manipulative, using her own child as a bargaining chip. But Mr. Peterson assured her it was the only language men like Nate understood. The weeks turned into a miserable slog. Nate cut her off financially. The credit cards were declined. The household accounts were frozen. The only money she had was what was in her own personal bank account, a remnant from her gallery days. Suddenly, the woman who lived in a multi-million-dollar penthouse had to worry about buying groceries. The staff, the chef, the housekeeper, the driver were all dismissed by Nate's office, their final paychecks issued along with NDAs of their own. Sophia was utterly alone in the vast, silent apartment with only Oliver for company. The emptiness of the space amplified her loneliness. Every room held a memory now tainted. The kitchen where they'd drunkenly tried to make pasta from scratch. The media room where they'd curled up to watch old movies. The bedroom where they had created their son. It was all a lie. The legal battle was draining. Nate's lawyers buried Mr. Peterson in paperwork, filing motion after motion, designed to harass and exhaust them. They subpoenaed her friends, her family, even the gallery she had worked at years ago, searching for any dirt they could use to paint her as an unfit mother. They portrayed her as a gold digger, a social climber who had trapped a wealthy man and was now trying to extort him. Sophia felt herself shrinking. The vibrant, confident woman she had been was disappearing, replaced by a shadow of anxiety and fear. Some days it was a struggle just to get out of bed. But then she would hear Oliver stirring in his crib, his small coos and babbles a lifeline in the suffocating darkness. He was the only thing that mattered. For him, she had to fight. She sold some of the jewelry Nate had given her over the years, pieces not explicitly covered in the prenup, to cover her mounting legal fees and living expenses. It was a humiliating experience sitting in a private room at a high-end jeweler on 47th Street as a man in a loop appraised the tokens of a love that had never been real. One evening, as she was scrolling through a financial news site, a headline caught her eye. Blackwood and Vance announce strategic merger, forming Titan firm Apex Global. There was a photo of Nate and Victoria standing side by side at a press conference, their hands clasped together, beaming for the cameras. They looked powerful, invincible. A true power couple. He was wearing the Patek Philippe watch he'd put on the night he left. She was wearing the Cartier diamond earrings. Sophia's stomach twisted. He hadn't even waited for the divorce to be finalized. He was flaunting his new life, their new empire for the whole world to see, while she was trapped in their old home fighting for scraps. The agony of his betrayal was a physical weight pressing down on her, threatening to crush her completely. She closed her laptop, went into Oliver's room, and watched him sleep, his small chest rising and falling in the soft glow of the nightlight. He was the only piece of truth left in her life, and she would not let them take him. The battle raged on for another month, a war of attrition waged by Nate's legal team. Mr. Peterson was relentless, countering every move, but the process was designed to break Sophia's spirit and her bank account. She felt trapped in a nightmare, her future being decided in sterile conference rooms by men in $1,000 suits. A breakthrough, or what seemed like one, came from an unexpected source. As part of the discovery process, Nate's lawyers were forced to turn over a mountain of financial documents related to his personal income and assets to be used in determining child support. It was a heavily redacted and curated selection, of course, but it was something. Mr. Peterson had hired a forensic accountant to sift through the data looking for hidden assets. One rainy Tuesday, Mr. Peterson called her into his office. "We might have something, Sophia," he said, his tone cautiously optimistic. He pointed to a line item on a spreadsheet projected onto the wall. For the past 6 months, there have been a series of substantial wire transfers from one of Blackwood's personal holding companies, NB Holdings, LLC, to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The recipient is a shell corporation named Oakhaven Enterprises. "Is he just hiding money?" Sophia asked. "It's more than that," Mr. Peterson said, tapping his pen on his desk. "The amounts are irregular, but large, millions at a time. And the timing is strange. They seem to correspond with downturns in the stock of companies he was known to be short-selling. It looks less like hiding money and more like paying someone off, or perhaps being extorted." The idea of anyone extorting Nathaniel Blackwood seemed impossible. He was the one who held all the power, the one who pulled the strings. That night, unable to sleep, Sophia found herself back in Nate's home office. She hadn't touched it since the night she'd discovered the emails, but now Mr. Peterson's words echoed in her head. She didn't know what she was looking for. A clue, a sign, anything that would make sense of the man she had married. She ran her fingers along the spines of the leather-bound books on his shelves. He had a collection of first editions. The Great Gatsby, The Sun Also Rises, Atlas, shrugged. Behind a row of classics, her fingers brushed against something that wasn't a book. It was a small, sleek, external hard drive. It was so small, it had been completely hidden from view. Her heart began to pound. It was probably nothing. Business files, backups. But her intuition, the same one that had screamed at her about Victoria, was now tingling with a different kind of alarm. She took the drive to her own laptop and plugged it in. It was password protected. Of course it was. She tried all the usual combinations, their anniversary, his birthday, Oliver's birthday. Nothing. She tried the name of his first company, his mother's maiden name, the street he grew up on in Queens. Still nothing. Frustrated, she was about to give up when a thought struck her. It was a long shot, a deeply personal memory from their early days of dating. He had once confessed to her after too much wine that his biggest fear was not failure, but mediocrity. that his driving force was a promise he'd made to his father on his deathbed. She typed in the password, for Dad 1998. The drive opened. It was filled with folders, but one caught her eye immediately. The Rosales Project. Inside were encrypted files, audio recordings, and scanned documents. Sophia's hands were shaking as she clicked on one of the audio files. It was a recording of a phone call. She recognized Nate's voice instantly, but it was different, strained, tense. The other voice was heavily accented, menacing. "The arrangement is simple, Blackwood," the accented voice said. "We give you the information, you use it, you profit, and we get our percentage, 20% off the top. No delays. The risk is enormous." Nate's voice replied, tight with stress. "This is insider trading on an unprecedented scale. If the SEC ever gets a wind of this, the SEC is the least of your worries." The other man chuckled, a chilling sound. "Worry about us. My employer, Mr. Rosales, does not tolerate partners who get creative with their accounting. We are not the SEC. We do not file lawsuits." "You understand?" Sophia felt a cold dread wash over her. She clicked through more files. There were documents detailing illicit stock trades, insider information on pending government regulations, and plans to short-sell companies based on sabotage. Nate wasn't just a ruthless businessman. He had made a deal with the devil. He was in bed with what sounded like an organized crime syndicate run by a man named Rosales. The money flowing to the Cayman Islands wasn't extortion. It was his payment to them, the price of the information that had helped him build the final tiers of his empire. Another folder contained more recent files. It included a detailed analysis of Apex Global, the new company he had formed with Victoria. And then a single terrifying document, a life insurance policy. Not for him. It was a new policy taken out 3 months ago on Victoria Vance. For $100 million. Nate was the sole beneficiary. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The merger with Vance Capital wasn't just about ambition. Victoria's father was a powerful lawyer. Her company was legitimate and well-respected. By merging with her, Nate was trying to legitimize his own ill-gotten gains to wash the dirty money through a clean enterprise. But why the life insurance policy? Why the sudden, brutal push to divorce Sophia? She found her answer in the last audio file dated just 1 week ago. It was another call with the man with the accent. "Your merger has complicated things, Blackwood," the man said, his voice cold. "Mr. Rosales feels his contribution is being diluted. He is no longer satisfied with 20%. He wants a controlling interest in Apex Global." "That's impossible." Nate's voice was ragged. "That would destroy the company. It would expose everything that is your problem. Not ours. You have until the end of the month, or we will liquidate our assets. And you are our primary asset, along with your new partner and your family. The boy, what is his name? Oliver. It would be a shame for him to grow up without a father. Or a mother." Sophia dropped the laptop. A wave of ice-cold terror washed through her. This wasn't about a divorce. This wasn't about another woman. This was about survival. Nate was trapped, being squeezed by a criminal syndicate that was now threatening to destroy not just him, but her and their innocent son. The affair, the cruel divorce, the public merger with Victoria. It was all a desperate, calculated move. But to what end was he trying to protect them? Or was he preparing to sacrifice them all? The threat was no longer a glimmer. It was a consuming fire. And she and Oliver were standing right in its path. The morning of Oliver's first birthday dawned gray and overcast, a perfect mirror of Sophia's soul. She had forced herself to go through the motions decorating the vast living room with blue and silver balloons and a banner that read, "Happy First Birthday, Oliver." A small, beautiful cake from a bakery on Madison Avenue sat on the kitchen counter. She had invited only Chloe and her parents, who were flying in from Ohio. A lavish party felt obscene under the circumstances. This was supposed to be a day of pure joy, a celebration of the little boy who was her entire world. Instead, it was shadowed by a terrifying secret that made every happy birthday wish feel like a lie. She now understood the coldness in Nate's eyes during their confrontation. It wasn't hatred for her. It was the dead-eyed fear of a man with a gun to his head. His cruelty hadn't been personal. It had been a performance. He had needed to push her away to sever their lives so cleanly and publicly that no one could ever connect them. He was trying to build a firewall between his toxic world and the family he was about to lose. The realization didn't erase the pain he had caused, but it recast it in a tragic, desperate light. Just as Chloe arrived with a mountain of presents, the doorman buzzed from the lobby. "Ma'am, Mr. Blackwood is here to see you." Sophia's heart leaped into her throat. "Send him up." Chloe shot her a worried look. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" "I have to be," Sophia whispered. Nate stepped out of the private elevator looking like a ghost. He was impeccably dressed in a dark suit, but he was pale with dark circles under his eyes that his usual confident swagger couldn't hide. He looked exhausted and haunted. He was holding a large navy blue leather folio, not a birthday gift. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes taking in the pathetic party decorations. His gaze fell on Oliver, who was sitting on the floor, happily playing with a set of wooden blocks. For a moment, the mask of the ruthless billionaire fell away, and all Sophia could see was a father looking at his son with an expression of profound, unbearable grief. "Happy birthday to my boy," he said, his voice hoarse. He cleared his throat. "Sophia, I need to speak with you. Alone." Chloe gave Sophia's arm a squeeze. "I'll take the birthday boy and inspect his cake." She scooped up Oliver and carried him towards the kitchen, giving Nate a look of pure venom as she passed. Silence descended on the room. Nate walked over to the large marble coffee table and placed the leather folio on it. He unzipped it and laid out a thick stack of documents. "What is this, Nate Sophia?" asked her voice quiet. "More legal threats. Have your lawyers found a new way to call me an unfit mother?" "No," he said, not looking at her. He stared out the window at the gray expanse of Central Park. "This is the opposite of that." He gestured to the papers. "These are transfer of ownership documents, stock certificates, deeds, trust agreements, everything." Sophia stepped closer, her eyes scanning the top pages. She saw the names of his companies, the addresses of his properties, the account numbers for his investment portfolios. And next to the line that said, "Transferee," her name was written, Sophia Rossi. "I don't understand," she breathed. He finally turned to face her. The look in his eyes was one of utter defeat. "I made a mistake, Soph. A long time ago. I got greedy. I wanted to build this empire so fast I took a shortcut. I got into business with some very bad people. The kind of people who don't go away. Rosales," she said, the name falling like a stone between them. His eyes widened in shock and fear. "How?" "The hard drive." Behind the first edition of Gatsby, she explained. "I know Nate. I know about the insider trading. I know they are threatening you. I know they are threatening us." A wave of something relief, despair, she couldn't tell, washed over his face. He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "I was trying to protect you, to get you out. By calling me dead weight, by putting me and our son through hell," she demanded, the anger flaring back up hot and sharp. "Yes," he said, looking up, his eyes wild. "I had to make it look real. I had to make it look like the most bitter, hateful divorce in New York history. I needed everyone, the media, the business world, and especially them, to believe that I had cut you off completely, that you hated my guts, and that I had left you with next to nothing. I needed you to be irrelevant to me. He stood up and paced the room like a caged animal. They are squeezing me, Soph. They want a controlling interest in Apex, which they will bleed dry and use for money laundering until it implodes. If I fight them, they'll kill me. They'll kill Victoria, and then they'll come after you and Oliver because you would be my heirs. They see my family as an asset, a point of leverage. He stopped in front of her, his hands gripping her arms. His touch was not harsh, but desperate. But if I have nothing, I'm no longer an asset. If my wife, who publicly despises me, suddenly owns everything, they can't touch it. It's all locked away in a trust for Oliver, with you as the sole trustee. It's shielded. It's clean. They can't get to it without a legal fight that would expose them completely. You and Oliver will be safe, and very, very wealthy. It was an insane, desperate gambit. A scorched earth defense. He wasn't just giving her a settlement, he was giving her the entire kingdom. He was abdicating the throne to save the royal line. "What about you, Nate?" she whispered, searching his face. "What happens to you?" A sad smile touched his lips. "I have a plan. I'm going to disappear. I've been setting it up for months. A new identity, a new life somewhere they'll never find me. I have one chance to get away tonight." He glanced at his watch. "But if I fail, if they catch me, well, that's why you have to sign these papers. Now, before my father-in-law-to-be Arthur Vance gets wind of this. He's my executor. If I die before these are signed, he and Victoria get everything, and they won't be able to protect it from Rosales." He picked up a pen and held it out to her. It was the ultimate ultimatum on their son's first birthday. Sign the papers, accept the empire, and let him walk out of their lives forever, possibly to his death, or refuse and leave her and her son vulnerable to monsters she couldn't even imagine. Her hand was shaking as she took the pen. She looked from the documents to the face of the man she had loved, hated, and now tragically understood. He had betrayed her, yes, but the man standing before her now was making the ultimate sacrifice. With tears streaming down her face, Sophia Rossi began to sign her name document after document, signing away her old life and inheriting an empire built on lies, all to save the future of the little boy happily eating cake in the next room. The signing was a frantic, surreal affair. Nate guided her through the stack of documents, his voice a low, urgent murmur, explaining the function of each one. The deed to the penthouse, the titles for the Hamptons estate, and a villa in Lake Como. The ownership certificates for his fleet of cars. The documents establishing the Oliver Blackwood Trust, an impenetrable financial vehicle that now held the entirety of Nate's liquid assets stock portfolio and controlling interest in Apex Global. She was the sole signatory, the trustee, the empress. When the last signature was complete, a heavy silence filled the room. The transfer was done. Nathaniel Blackwood, the Titan of Wall Street, was now on paper a man with nothing to his name. He stood up, his shoulders slumping as if a physical weight had been lifted from them. "It's done," he breathed. He walked over to the kitchen doorway. Chloe stood there, holding Oliver, her face a mask of confusion and shock. Nate looked at his son, his eyes drinking in every detail of his face. He didn't dare touch him. "I love you, Oliver," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Be a good man. Better than your father." He then looked at Sophia, his eyes filled with a universe of regret. "There's a safe in the wall behind the Monet in my office. The combination is Oliver's birthday. Inside is the original hard drive, a burner phone, and a letter. It explains everything in more detail. Use it if you ever need to. Goodbye, Sophia." And with that he turned and walked to the elevator. He didn't look back. The doors slid shut and he was gone. Sophia stood frozen, the pen still in her hand. The silence he left behind was profound, a vacuum where a hurricane had just been. The days that followed were a whirlwind of managed chaos. The first call was from a furious Arthur Vance. News of the massive asset transfer had hit the system, and he was apoplectic. Sophia, channeling a strength she didn't know she possessed, referred him to Mr. Peterson. Her lawyer, after a marathon session where Sophia explained the entire terrifying story, switched from bulldog to fortress guardian. He handled the ensuing legal firestorm, fielding threats from Vance's firm and stonewalling inquiries from a suddenly very interested SEC. The story Nate had fabricated about their bitter divorce provided the perfect cover. To the outside world, it looked like Nate, in a moment of madness, or perhaps drug-fueled mania, had inexplicably signed away his fortune. Sophia was portrayed in the tabloids as either the ultimate Black Widow or the luckiest woman alive. The narrative was confusing, chaotic, but plausible enough to keep the real truth hidden. Sophia, meanwhile, had to learn to be a billionaire. She held emergency meetings with the board of Apex Global, who were stunned to find the scorned ex-wife now holding the controlling shares. Guided by Mr. Peterson and a team of crisis managers, she navigated the treacherous corporate waters. She was no longer a quiet art historian. She was the protector of an empire, and more importantly, the guardian of her son's future. Life in the gilded cage was different now. It was no longer a prison, but a command center. She worked tirelessly, learning about finance, corporate governance, and asset management. She found she had a keen mind for it, a quiet strength that people underestimated at their peril. She was no Victoria Vance, but she was smart, and she was motivated by the most powerful force in the world, a mother's love. But every night after Oliver was asleep, she would stand at the vast windows overlooking the city and wonder. Was Nate alive? Did he make it? Was he living a quiet life in some distant corner of the world, or was his body at the bottom of the East River? The burner phone in the safe remained silent. The letter he'd left her was a confession, an apology, and a love letter, a tragic testament to the man he could have been. Her new life was a paradox, one of immense power and wealth, yet haunted by a constant lingering shadow. She had everything a person could want, but the man she once loved, the father of her child, was gone. She had been betrayed with another woman, but on her baby's birthday, she had learned that the greatest betrayals are sometimes twisted acts of love. She was Sophia Rossi, the unexpected queen of an empire, forever ruling in the shadow of a fallen king. And so Sophia's story reminds us that the truth is rarely simple. What appeared to be a straightforward tale of infidelity and greed was, in fact, a desperate story of sacrifice and survival. She was handed an empire not out of guilt, but as a shield to protect her and her son from a danger she never knew existed. But her victory is bittersweet, leaving us all to wonder about the cost of such protection. What do you think happened to Nathaniel? Did his desperate gamble pay off, or did he pay the ultimate price? We all face battles in our lives, though, hopefully none this dramatic, and sometimes the lines between hero and villain, betrayal and love, become irrevocably blurred. If this story of twists, turns, and heartbreaking choices moved you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share it with someone who loves a story they can't predict, And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that are stranger than fiction. Click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring these incredible stories to light. Thank you for listening.